Hello, everybody. We'd like to welcome you into the Rise Now Sunrise series. This is part 2 of 4 of the State of the Urban Neighborhoods Sunrise series that we are hosting. This mini series is including some discussions on systematic oppression, discrimination, and injustice against the communities that we hold in San Diego. So for now, I want to go over some simple guidelines for this webinar. So all attendees are muted. We do encourage your participation, and we will have a poll shortly where we can kind of get to see who's in the room and how we're feeling. Now, during the conversation, we open it up for you all to utilize the Q&A box. We will have about 15 minutes at the end of the session to answer the Q&A questions as quickly and swiftly as possible. Now, it is noted here that the Q&A icon is at the top of your screen. For some folks, it's also at the bottom of their screen. And so we will also not be utilizing the raise hand or audio features. And again, we just ask that all content related questions be used through the Q&A box. And this webinar is being recorded and it's on Facebook Live. So with that, I'd like to introduce the President and CEO, Mr. Tony Young.
Thank you, Selena, and welcome everybody to our RISE conversation. And just to let you know a little bit about RISE, we're really an organization that focuses on leadership and making sure that as the city grows, we provide leaders that are authentic and real and understand their subject matter from a real experiential perspective. We also focus on civic engagement, which is what we're going to do now, / policy, which hopefully this turns into, and also supporting nonprofit development. So those are our pillars. That's what we focus on. And today we're really excited about us collecting a number of great ideas from an esteemed panel. And so welcome everybody. So we have some amazing faculty, fellows, and also Dr. Paul Gathold, who is our superintendent of schools. So Dr. Paul Gathold is our superintendent of county schools, which is, a very important job that deals with a lot of issues throughout the entire county. And we're happy for him to be here. Dr. Fabiola Bagula, who is the Senior Director of Equity for the San Diego County Office of Education. And she's also a RISE faculty member, and we're very proud of her and what she does for the community. And then we have 2 RISE fellows who are amazing. We're very proud of Tamara Muhammad, who is the new school principal at Lemon Grove School District. She's a RISE fellow and also a RISE board member. She's from our community, and she is doing amazing things, and we're just watching her rise as a rising star. And then of course, Stephen Askar, who's another RISE fellow just out of Harvard also. He's got his master's degree from Harvard, was a RISE fellow a couple of years ago, and also is now the co-founder and chief operation officer of Read Aloud Productions. So, thank you all for being here. I'm just so excited to hearing what you're going to talk about, because we really want to figure out, because we hear a lot of issues that are out there, and this is a very interesting time for education. But the question is, ultimately, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to affect change? We hear about what needs to change, and I'm sure we're going to hear about that today. But the question is going to be, ultimately, when people look back to 2020, is like, what did you actually do? And part of that is going to be policy. And what we want to do is engage our community to talk about what types of things can they advocate for at the county board level, or at the city council level, or at the Lemon Grove School District level. I'm not even sure if you have a school district, a board. That's something that we have, or from a private perspective, like where Steve is, right? So that's what we really want to talk about. And so I want to start off with a quick question for all of you all. Just to, first of all, what exactly do you do? What are you doing on a daily basis now in this new time of COVID-19 and time of change? But also, when you go to work every day, or when you get off the couch and turn on your Zoom, what is top of mind for you when it comes to education? So I want to start with Dr. Guthold, because he has a really broad perspective, and just as clearly Fabiola and Paul work together on a lot of these issues. But I really want to hear what you have to say, Paul. What's going on with,
Sure.
What's the big issue that you're dealing with?
Sure. Well, there are plenty, but in context, San Diego County Office of Education really supports all 42 districts, 160 some charter schools. And in addition to working very closely with all of those agencies, we also have our own educational programs that we directly oversee. Those are our juvenile court community schools, our kids who are incarcerated, kids who have been expelled. We have community schools, pregnant teen. You've probably heard of the Monarch School and San Pasqual. Those are all schools for our most vulnerable kids, our foster homeless. And in addition to that, we have probably 2,000 employees spread out across the county that provide everything from facilities to curriculum development and everything in between. I've been meeting with the superintendents every Friday for the past 6 months since March on providing guidance support regarding COVID and all of the challenges that have come along with it. I guess when you talk about what's top of mind, it's a very simple thing for me. When I wake up and everything that we do in our office, if we're not changing the lives of kids, then we have to pivot, because I cannot go through another year of talking about some of these educational gaps. People have talked about the achievement gap, and I don't think we have an achievement gap. I think we have an access, opportunity, and expectations gap. And until we cut through all of that, we're going to continue to compare Black and brown kids to white and Asian. It's an unfair comparison until every child walks through our schools, feels valued, feels loved. I mean, right now we're celebrating Latinx Heritage Month. In February, we celebrate Black History Month. These are just examples. Why don't our kids feel celebrated like that every single day? Every single day in our program. We have a rites of passage ceremony we do for our African-American students at the end of the year that's loaded with culture, celebration of song and poetry and dance. Put kentes across the kids and tell them we love them and we're proud of them. And I have the principal stand in the back of the room and I say, shame on us if our kids don't feel like this every single day. It shouldn't take an ethnic studies course. That's a step in the right direction, but it's very simple. Is there high expectations for every child? That means, are we preparing every kid for college, no matter what? Are they loved and supported? Do they know where they are academically, where they want to pursue their goals and dreams? And are we responding to that and providing the appropriate supports? Until we can faithfully say yes for every single child that walks through our program, I'm going to be fighting this battle very hard. I am tired of talking about this, and there are some specific things I think that I know work. I've been a part of some great systems and structures where we have disrupted the norm to provide supports for all kids. Fabi's work is that right now, and I'm sorry if I'm speaking too long on an introduction, but we have to seize this moment of what's been going on in our communities and across our country. I would say we had some few reluctant volunteers to engage in equity work, and now Fabi can't keep up with the requests, and that's a good thing. So, equity is self-reflection. We have to provide that support for adults before they can effectively impact our child's lives in a positive way. So that's what top of mind for me.
Yeah, that's good. And this is a good transition to Dr. Bugala, because, obviously this is your number one draft pick over at the county. I mean, she is the linchpin when it comes to addressing some of these issues. I hate to put too much pressure on you, um, Fabiola, but I mean, that's what do you think about every day, and what are your responsibilities at this point?
So there, I mean, there's a lot. I wake up also every morning thinking about the service, right? We're a service-oriented organization. And so immediately I'm in service and representing the children of San Diego County. So that's ultimately the first goal. Like, how am I going to make sure that they feel loved and respected and engaged and united? So that's really my overall goal. And as Dr. Gotthold said, which by the way, see how why I like working with him? Like, this is actually perfect.
Yeah.
Is really thinking about how do we help support districts, organizations, school sites, leaders, and ultimately individuals, because we get a lot of requests. And so whether you're a teacher, a singular teacher at a school, or whether you're a whole school district that is seeking to enhance your equity knowledge, that is something that we're going to develop learning sessions for you. And not only learning sessions, but also coaching sessions to actually enact equity. Right? Equity, there's a lot of isms that they have to learn about. They have to develop an equity consciousness around their identity and mindset. But ultimately, you can be as woke as you want to be, but if you can't impact instruction and outcomes, then it doesn't matter. And so it has to be in conjunction. So there's equity consciousness development around your identity and your mindset, but also the skill set. Like, do I have a repertoire of differentiated instruction? Do I understand assessment literacy? It has to be together. And so really one of the things that we do is we combine both in our learnings, but also, again, the most important part is the very personalized coaching sessions, because we serve the whole community of San Diego. I still think we're very segregated across San Diego, especially socioeconomically, and so the needs are different. Now, right now, one of the really beautiful things that is happening is children are telling us that the adults in their system need equity work. They're demanding it. They're taking on social platforms. They're giving their testimony about racism in schools. I've heard them chanting and banging on the doors of board meetings during this time. So. Wow. This is something that, like, children that are feeling that empowered, I think is something beautiful, but I also think that it's also that the fact that they have to do that for the adults to wake up is also data for our system. So that's a little bit about what we do. And much like Dr. Gotthold said, we're getting a lot of requests. We're not saying no, we're trying to develop sessions to say yes to everyone. And ultimately, I keep saying it's the same thing, that children don't show up to schools with achievement gaps to fill. We don't have to fill achievement gaps for them. They have strengths that we haven't learned how to leverage. And so we really have to pay attention to the kids and leverage their skill sets.
Well, Tamara, you are unique. I try not to fawn over you too much because we're so proud of you, but you've spent so much time in the classroom. You've worked at Lincoln High School, which is such an important part of our community, and now you're taking leadership on another level. And I think we know what principals do, at least I think we know. But what do you think about, I mean, how do you move an entire school? And I'll say this because I know I've been a teacher, is that you got teachers unions, you got all kinds of stuff going on that might not allow you to just implement stuff as much as you might want to. But what do you think about every day? And what are you focusing on?
Well, the first thing, coming into Lemon Grove School District and coming into the particular school that I'm at, they've been going through a roller coaster of leadership changes and lots of turmoil for the past couple of years. And my first and foremost thing that I think about every day is, how can I repair that hurt? How can I help them cope with what has been going on for years, not being heard, not being listened to, or just not working in a place that was enjoyable as an educator. If you're not enjoying the fact that you're coming in to teach someone else's children all day long, that makes for a very long and hard day. And it rubs off onto the children. They can feel us, they know our energy, they know what's going on. Even when we try to mask it, they know what's going on. So my first and foremost right now is creating family. Now, you know me, I'm a community-oriented person. So when I walked onto this campus and I got to meet the staff by way of Zoom, by the way, meeting my staff for the first time.
Mhm.
That's the first thing I told them, is that we needed to create our family here. We needed to repair the dysfunction that was going on in our family so that we can better serve our students. And my goal is to create that village mentality in our school. I'll start with the staff, filtering out to the students, and then bringing in the community. These are all the things that have been near and dear to my heart my entire educational journey, is making sure that we are creating the village again, the whole village mentality. We have to help one another, support one another, and be there for one another in order for our children to succeed. When I walked into this school, and any school that I've ever been in a part of, my first thought is this a place I would like my children to go to? Well, my grandchildren now, but is this a place I would like them to go to? And if it's not a place that I want them to go to, how can we get it to that place? I won't abandon ship, but I'm going to work hard to make sure that it is a place that I trust my own children, grandchildren, and everyone else's children to be a part of. So that's the work I'm doing every day.
Mm. And Stephen, you were in the classroom at one time. You're on mute, by the way. We got to get you off mute. But you were in the classroom. You were dealing with some challenging populations, because I've been to some of the site that you taught at and visited you. And now you're on the outside from a private perspective, which I think is going to be an important part of educational change. What are you thinking about every day, and what do you do?
Tony, I think about a lot every day, and I love this question. It's like I go to bed at night, and a lot keeps me up, and then a lot gets me up in the morning and gets me going. And before I get into any of it, I just want to name how grateful I am to be here with Paul, Fabiola, and Tamara. Truly an honor, and Tony, you as well. Can't forget you. I think about a lot of things. First and foremost, like what's most present on my heart and mind are my kids. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. I think about them, and then I think about their friends. I think about the kids that I taught in preschool in City Heights for a while. I think about the first and second graders I taught. And then I think about the community. Like Tamara, you referenced this tribe, you said tribe mentality, and that really resonates with me. I think for me, like San Diego is my community, is my tribe. And so those are the folks that I think about. And then from a private perspective, I stepped out of the classroom this past year to attend school. And while at school, I developed this software with a team, a brilliant team. And the software listens to students read out loud and gives them immediate specific feedback on how they're doing in terms of phonemic accuracy, pacing, comprehension. And as we're developing this with the user in mind, I can't help but feel, and Paul, you referenced this, that there is an access block, right? It's shifting the conversation from these gaps, these opportunity gaps, really like who has access to resources, to the humans that make the work happen. And from my perspective, it's like who has access to the technology, right? And for a lot of years, it's been that you either have or you don't have access. And even within San Diego itself, there's segregated neighborhoods and schools that in budget conversations I'm having with them, it's very, very evident that that some are able to invest in education technology to increase that access for their kids. And there's some others that it's just not the case. They're doing all they can to fundraise and to figure out ways. And so for me, as I'm thinking about it, I wonder, like, how do we lower the barrier for entry for all these schools? We shouldn't always have to put the burden on schools, for them to have to raise the dollars. It's how do we lower the barrier for entry to give them access to technology that could, at the end of the day, really help them. And for me, I'm completely biased and skewed towards reading. I think reading is a fundamental element that every kid should have access to, whether you're in school, outside of school, whoever you are, you should be able to learn how to read. And it's not the technology that's necessarily going to solve the problem. It's not like a quick technical fix, but really there's so much adaptive nature around the policy that forms and shapes how we distribute technology to different schools, how we consume it, and at the end of the day, how we're helping kids access and make the most of it.
Well, first of all, I love the fact that you use adaptive and technical fixes in your discussion today, because that's what RISE is about, right? So did you do that on purpose, or is it just because you just talked?
I think Yeah, I think it's because I'm with you, Tony. But yeah,
I was
that's
looking
been
for that.
heavily imbued in me since Gen 4. Shout out for all you Gen 4 folks out there. It's something that's been present on heart and mind all this time.
I think one thing that's interesting is that technology, which is technical, can also be an adaptive fix, right? I mean, it could be an adaptive problem solver. So I'm glad that you brought that up. But you know, what I heard a lot today, I mean, just from what you all have talked about, is resources, right? You talked about resources, and it seems to me that just based on the last 10 years of just bond after bond after bond for schools and building schools and other things that they use these bonds for, seems like there's a lot of like fiscal resources out there. And tell me if I'm wrong, if more money is going to solve this, or more that type of resource is going to solve this, or is there something else that's going to actually help create a more equitable situation when it comes to our students? Because we could throw money at this stuff all day, and it seems like I can actually feel like we're doing that in many ways. Maybe it's not being distributed correctly, but beyond resources, how do we address this equity issue? And I'll open it up to whoever wants to address that first, because you all have a perspective here.
Yeah, I think if we, when we talk about these equity issues, I think it's incumbent upon us to do the right thing and address the needs of our kids. Isn't it? Some define equity as what kids need and deserve. Let's just call it that. And if there's not that access to resource, I've always been one to take that on and do it because it's the right thing to do. And in my previous district,
where was your district, Paul?
Linwood. It's next to Compton. Superintendent there. I spent 7 years there. Mm-hmm. I'll just give you an example. We identified 6,000 kids who never had access to healthcare, never saw a doctor other than first day they entered this world. We used bond money, got some private sponsorship, and opened up community health centers that were free and open to the public, anyone who needed healthcare. Partnerships to develop access points for kids when it came to mental health. We developed weekend programs. There were kids that were not eating over the weekend, so Saturday and Sunday became community events with parent training. And by the way, what Tamara said, Tamara, you're going to be an incredibly successful principal. These are things that are so critical to the success of the school. When you build that village and that community support around it, one of the unintended consequences I saw in that work, now that we had the parents at schools over the weekend, they became more interested in their child's academic. Mm-hmm. They became more interested, hey, what else could we designed an entire parent university. It had everything from, just real simple things that they wanted, like cooking classes, to an LVN certification course to become employed by the hospital that was around the corner. This was done through our adult ed. It was just combining our resources. No internet, no high-speed internet in the community. It stopped at Compton, Downey, and Southgate in the 105 corridor. Private public funding. We got fiber optics into the school, and we now could be a provider for the community to make sure kids had access. What we're doing even right now in San Diego County, there's approximately 100,000 kids without access to internet right now. Think about that for a second. We have over 550,000 kids. So when you talk about an equity issue, we think this is as essential as food, water, and power at your home. I mean, for many reasons, in particular now with distance learning, imagine the gaps without those access points. Now, we also have a paper pencil version and telephonic version to support our kids. Long story short, we negotiated with Cox, Verizon, and others. What we knew is that parents were not taking advantage of some of the programs that were that were meant for lower income families. They were worried about the documentation status, income verification. We took that all away. We're now the internet media intermediator for the families. You tell us who the family is, we'll put the equipment there, high-speed broadband, and we pay for it out of our care stimulus package. The Board of Supervisors we lobbied, they gave us $2 million. San Diego Foundation. And just in the last 2 weeks, we have connected thousands of kids with either hotspot solutions or self-install Wi-Fi internet. It just takes the skill and the will to identify where these gaps is and do whatever it takes to make sure our kids have what they need.
And it sounds like a more of a community, kind of not just a community neighborhood thing, but the San Diego community has to be all in on this. We're talking about business like Cox, Cable. In this case, SDG&E actually is supporting this whole discussion and some of the work that we're going to do afterwards. And just everybody has to be a part of it. And that's, to me, that sounds like the key. I mean, you talk about healthcare, mental health, a parent university, that has nothing, that's not even in our standards, as I understand, for California state standards.
You got to address Maslow before you address Bloom's. Plain and simple. Our kids come with us to a variety of needs. If we're not tapped into what they need, whether it's food insecurity, whether it's housing, I get involved in all of it. It doesn't matter. It's the right thing to do. Public education is one of the few entities where we can ensure equity, and we cannot let these other things be barriers for our children. Our children have to know that our school is not just about the academics. It's where you can get support in a number of different ways. That's where we have to be in every single one of our schools.
Well, I know that has triggered, I'm looking at three people's faces. I know Paul has said has triggered stuff. And there's some folks in the chat room that has triggered some comments. What do you all think about that? I mean, in regards to what Paul just kind of laid out, and how does that affect you, and how can you contribute to this more comprehensive approach to education, because everybody doesn't believe in that.
The comprehensive approach, I actually think COVID has definitely shown the spotlight on everyone's role. I'm really concerned about the disproportionate ways COVID is hitting certain communities, is impacting certain families in San Diego County and across our nation, and who is getting COVID and who is dying from COVID is very clear. And so those schools that are serving those students have to think differently about how they're re-engaging their families. There's historical trauma. The Economist yesterday said that since World War II, this is the first time that the amount of trauma that's happening to us as a population, the last time was during World War II. So there's a lot of needs. The syndemic pieces that are kind of, the intersection of needs that are happening between, I don't have, my parents are workers. I'm worried about their well-being. I don't have internet access. I can't go to school. And now the fires, especially if you live in a space where there's ash falling on you, it's very much something that's happening and really highlighting the need for a whole community to come together. And again, the Maslow before Bloom, yes. And then the other piece is about how we bring joy to our children,
right,
how we bring belonging to our children, how we bring love and autonomy for them. So there's a lot of things that we really all, much to Tamara, what you were saying about the whole village, right now is the demand for the whole village, and we're seeing it. And COVID is really shining a big old bright light on us to say, how are you going to work together to improve conditions for everyone?
So, I love how, hold on, Tony, got something to say.
Going straight to you, Tamara.
wait. Look, wait. Look, then my thing goes crazy. I love the fact that Paul brought up that resources aren't necessarily money, because oftentimes, like you said, Tony, it's throwing money at the situation. Is that really making things better? No, it's just filling our pockets and we can buy some new stuff. And the children don't always need stuff. They need people, they need time, they need physical resources that are going to help their bottom line and help their families. I had a campus aide come into my office the other day, and she was trembling a little bit, and she said, well, there's a family who the mom just had surgery. They haven't been able to come pick up their computers. Can I go take them to them? Well, of course you can. Like, why? Yes, you can. They need this. And if in your heart it says, go over and help that family, that's the village. Go over and help that family. And her church did a whole food distribution. She took over a box of food. The mom couldn't drive anywhere. Like, how are these children eating?
Mm-hmm.
And those are the resources they need. They need people. They need the love. They need people who can come in and help their bottom line and not just throw money at the situation and not give them pretty shiny things. They need someone who's going to impact their bottom line. And for right now during COVID, a lot of people, their bottom line is, am I eating today? Mm-hmm. Are the lights on? Like Paul said, do they even have internet to access and do school? So if we are not impacting them in that way and handing over resources that can support that, then we're just dangling things in front of them, the carrots that are a bit tainted.
Well, Stephen, now you're on the outside and you're looking from a different perspective. I mean, how can the corporate world or business help here? I mean, what is their role, at least from your perspective at this point?
I think the role is not to have the shiny carrot. We gotta trade that in for something else. And I think that's where the revolution starts, right? And I actually think that it's in the way we frame it, of like outside looking inside, inside looking outside, like where are the bridges that we're building, right? I'm curious about that part of the conversation. Making it even a more humane approach in not dehumanize. Well, you don't want to dehumanize the experience of technology just to say that technology is replacing the human interaction. Therefore, we're augmenting it in a way where there's no need for this human here, right? Like we want it to be supportive of that. I'm also like, I think something that's coming up for me right now is a sense of belonging. Like, especially in the era of COVID, as folks are displaced, like I'm thinking about specific children I taught, and do they, I get calls from them all the time. It's weird because they used to be 5 years old and now they're like 9, and they're calling me with complete sentences and really awesome, really awesome manners. But I like, even they tell me like, yeah, Mr. Steve, like I'm in my house, like alone all day, and they're telling me these stories, and it just makes me feel like, where's that sense of belonging, that sense of community that you get when you're in a classroom? But then when you're displaced, like, are you finding that in your home setting? And it's looking at the collective voice too. It's not just looking at a single story and broadcasting that as the entire narrative, but really understanding all these different pieces of identity and collective voice, which I think is essential. If we're really claiming to be taking steps towards the realm of racial equity, we first need to think about like the other side of that spectrum, where we have, and I won't belabor the point here, but it's like pre-diversity, diversity, belonging, inclusion, equity, racial equity. And belonging is a key element of that, right? Like we really need to hone in on, do kids feel like they're included, even before included, do they feel like they belong in the conversation? And I think the same thing goes for leaders too, Tony. It's like the folks who are making decisions at the table, do they feel like they belong? Do they feel like their voice is being heard? And again, like Tamara, what you said really, really connects with me in terms of like, we can't dehumanize that experience. From the very get-go of you saying, of course you can deliver this, to the meetings at the superintendent's office, where you're talking about like, what's gonna be the best next move for this school or this principal or this teacher.
Well, and COVID-19 has been brought up a number of times. And so I think it's a good time to kind of expound on that a little bit, because I think all of us are feeling that it's not going to last forever, that at some point we're going to come out of this current situation. And I was interested to hear what the group, and I won't focus on anybody specifically, and you guys can just say what you want, but I would think that there's going to be something after COVID-19, right? And there's some things that, like Fabiola talked about, that have been, there's a spotlight that has been put on them in regards to education. But there's also maybe some moments of clarity of maybe how we can go forward from COVID-19 and what that might look like, and to improve education in relation to what it used to be. So I was wondering what types of things have come to the top, to fruition, and not to the top in regards to that issue of COVID-19, and where can we go after we're out of this situation? I'll open it up. I mean, what do you all think?
So I know one of the things that we've been doing as the equity department at the county is leading workshops on understanding the disruption. So much to Stephen's point is really understanding the collective experience of the community that we're serving. And we even developed a continuum of disruption to understand the disruption that has happened in our communities, because we're all experiencing COVID very differently. There was actually a local student, I want to say the New York Times, but it was a New York periodical where one of our local high school seniors wrote about his own experience with COVID. He had 2 family members pass, and his parents are still essential workers. And so his whole question was, I know you're really concerned about me logging in, but I have other things that I'm thinking about during this time. So I do think that we need to understand that we're also experiencing COVID, right? We're not just serving our community that's experiencing COVID, we all are. And I know I'm living in a very privileged little bubble with everyone being connected and being able to work from home. And then, so how is the community I'm serving experiencing COVID? What are some of the things that we can do proactively to help support them? Some of these issues are actually impacting human growth. And so when I think about students in front of me, I'm also thinking about human beings being developed, and I'm contributing to their development. And so what are some healthy, proactive ways that I can engage with them, even if it's online? And I know people are getting really creative with those things. They're really thinking from the point of like, how can I intervene on this mass experience that we're having collectively, and how can we continue to lean into our humanity and compassion, because we're together and we're all experiencing this. So I know that that's the first step. We're really coaching teams into understanding their community, to understanding how to interact with them in a proactive way to set up these pieces to mitigate as much loss as possible.
And any other, thank you, Fabiola, any other like gems that we've identified out of COVID that will allow us to, when we move out of it, will be better, a better education system?
To me, it seems to be opening up the innovation of our educators.
Mm-hmm.
They are not teaching in a world that is quote unquote normal for them. So they've had to make a complete paradigm shift on how they do things, how they view things, and the relationship building process with each other as peers and with their students and families. This is uncharted territory for many of our educators out there. So allowing themselves to say, it's okay, or allowing themselves to realize I can't do everything and it's okay. And allowing them to realize that we can't have control over everything we do. Now, everybody on this screen right now has been an educator in one shape or form in a classroom. And you know, many of us teachers are control freaks. So we get in our classroom and we need things to be prioritized. We need systems in place. We need things to be the way they are supposed to be, whatever supposed to be is right now. Mm-hmm. And COVID came in, balled that up and threw it out the window and said, now teach. So teachers are having to rethink teaching, their methods, their mindset, everything.
How do we capture that though? We don't want to lose that.
No, we don't. What I'm doing personally is I am allowing teachers to be. That's the one thing we don't get to do a lot. We have to follow protocol. We have to look at standards. We have to do the checkoff list and all of that. I'm reminding teachers who they are. You are a teacher. You went into this profession to teach. Do that above and beyond anything else. Teach. That's what I want them to remember. That it doesn't matter how, when, or what they're doing or teaching to, or the curriculum they're using. Teach, because that's what your heart says to do. And if we can get them to remember that, once we leave this COVID era, that's still at the forefront. Teach. And a lot of people lost that prior to COVID. They were going through the motions. They were looking at the curriculum and following pacing guides. They weren't connecting with students. Now we have to make a concerted effort to connect with the student. Why? Because I can't see them face to face next to me, shake a hand, give a little dap or something. I can't do that. So now I have to do it ×2, ×3, and still make that hold and make that stick. So it's taking something we did and supersizing it right now. And that's the part that needs to stick, what was in their heart.
Wow. Any other thoughts on that? Because this is really good stuff.
Yeah, I just to build on, I will not be as inspiring, as articulate as the two that preceded me, but you know, there's a collective human spirit that inspires me every day when I do the work. You know, we knew we had to set aside space for not just our kids, but also for the adults to just work through what has been going on the past 6 months. And yeah, there's incredible examples of innovation, but this collective human spirit and what I've seen our staff do is take on a role that they hadn't done previously and really double and triple down on going out to our home visits, partnerships with the food bank, delivering food for those that didn't have transportation or were fearful of leaving the home. We got you. We're going to get through this. You know, this constant message of, you know, we're in this collectively and we're going to get out of this collectively. And I would say that you know, when we talk about seizing the opportunity in the moment, the one thing that we absolutely have to drive home and put at the forefront of all of our conversations is that our school systems were not working for all kids prior to this. And how does that reshape in its form with this collective efficacy, with this different type of spirit and attention to make sure that we do not lose one child. The sense of urgency around just children. Dr. Weber talks about this all the time. It's so funny to me. You want to talk about a policy decision? How about this? This is going to throw a wrench into the whole thing.
All right.
We throw, and I, as a superintendent, I got to tell you, we advocate for school funding. We are underfunded in California. I'm just putting that out there. 80–90% of our budgets are people. We're in the business of people.
Right.
But if we're serious about every child reading by the 3rd grade, why don't we incentivize that? Why doesn't the money come when we achieve that? Not prior to. What would look differently? I mean, I'll give you an example, Tony. I mean, 3 years, we're doing the right thing because it's the right thing. We had 600-something kids incarcerated. We've been working on alternative detention with the DA, with you know, the juvenile court system, pointing out that when white kids would get picked up for misdemeanors with substance abuse, they get put in rehab. Black and brown kids, same offense, they get incarcerated. You know, that's been stripped out and dealt with. We only have 122 kids in our camps and halls right now that are incarcerated. Many of our students who went through the alternative program, all of them, none of them are repeat offenders.
Wow.
Because we know that once a child's incarcerated once, there's a high tendency for that to repeat itself. But here's the kicker. All this work on the back end, we're not expelling as many kids, all this other stuff. We're losing money in our agency because our enrollment is decreasing by doing the right work. The funding stream is attached to the wrong thing. You get more money for the more kids you have incarcerated. We flipped that. I'm gonna take the hit. Let's avoid incarceration. Let's find out what the kid needs. And we're losing money as a result of it. But it's the right thing to do. Right. So some of the funding models actually are not tied to good business practice. It's disincentivizing it. What happens when you have English learners? You get more money. You reclassify them as fluent, which is good for the kid. You lose the money. Wow. It's backwards. It's backwards.
So, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
No. So, you know, when we look at things fundamentally, it's just interesting how some of these things were put into place decades ago. And You know, I'm not popular for this. I have never expelled a kid in 28 years. And I've worked in some very large districts and in the juvenile court community schools as a teacher, because I saw what happened to the child and the family firsthand, because those are the kids that I started with. But we had a simple formula. I'm gonna treat you like my mom treated me. You're going to college, I'm gonna help you get there.
Yeah.
No excuses. You're gonna be prepared no matter what. And our kids, we didn't just get them out of the system and through high school, we got them into college. When I started working in the comprehensive district, we were sorting kids, labeling. I just could not believe it. If we could do one thing right away that would just disrupt the system, and that is eliminate tracking. Eliminate tracking.
Eliminate tracking?
Well, because what we do is we sort and package kids and put them in different classes based on either a test score or perceived adults' perception of what they can and cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
Every child deserves access to high expectations, to rigor, no question about it. Our kids are going to do exactly what we ask them to do.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I know Tamara you witnessed that in some of the schools that you've taught at. So I won't go too far into that, but Steve, did you want to say something? Because I do have a question for the panel, because we want to start narrowing this thing down, because I do have an important question for you.
Yeah, Paul, I want to know, what is that question you asked? You said, you put a stake in the ground. You basically said, what could we do to incentivize third grade reading? Could you ask that one more time?
No, I said it's just fascinating that we don't incentivize what's good for kids. It's disincentivized. What if money came to the school if you got every kid to read by the third grade? It's just a theoretical, just putting it out there to think differently about how we get additional funding. Because schools that get more money, the money comes in regardless of the outcome. But what if you got that additional money by performing?
Yeah, Paul, I on a really selfish note, we got to connect after this. I have some thoughts that are, they're poorly prepared, but I'd love to connect with you. Tony, I'm going to make this short, 60 seconds or less. There's like danger in a single story, but I can't help but think about my dad. You talked about disruption, Fabiola, and he came from Iran in the late 70s when the Shah was overthrown, and talk about like the disruption in his life. And he was plagued with disease in America, akin to COVID, where people looked at the color of his skin and heard the accent of his voice and immediately shied away from him. Even just his name, Isa Askar, in America, it doesn't bode well. And so I thought about him, and I thought about what helped him overcome, and I thought about the bridges of love that connected him with society and community and tribes. And I think that there's this essence of like radical love and healing that needs to take place. And hold on, I know I said the L word. I know love is a thing that's been commoditized and monopolized and monetized in so many different ways and shapes and forms. But I can't help but feel that, like, really, if we're going to do it either at a really humane individual level or at a societal level, systemic level, like there needs to be this radical innovation around how we're treating others, right? And that seems almost too basic, but it's like, I can't help but it starts with listening. It starts with understanding the collective voice. It starts with like truly being in tune with what's going on with members of the community. And there's more to that, and that was over 60 seconds. So
that was great. I love hearing you talk, Stephen, and you're right. And I think it can't just be within the school walls. I think many of you have brought that up. It can't just be in the bubble of education. It can't be. We have to have all parts of our society being a part of this. Because if we don't, it's you're not going to have all of our arms are wrapped around these children. And that's the part that I think is really important. But so now, we talked about some of the spotlight that has been COVID-19, some of the ways in which COVID-19 has encouraged innovation. And then as we come out of it, we are essentially still going into a industrialized school system. It was created during the industrial age, right? So we're going back to that. And so the question is, how do you what needs to change in the system to allow you all to do what you're saying that you want to do, right? Paul talked on some of it, but if you go back into this systematic way of teaching that has been around since the 1900s, what part of that system needs to be broken down from a policy perspective that you all can think of? And this is a very difficult question. I know it's very difficult, and you all have individuals that you are responsible for that actually make policy. There's all kinds of stuff. But I mean, what do we need to change about this system? And how can residents get out there and say, listen, you know what? This cannot continue on from a systematic perspective. We need to change this policy. I know that's a hard question, but
It's hard, but it's not.
Oh, well, it'll be hard for me.
It's hard, but it's not. No, because I remember, Fabi, you did a session in our Rise Up, and you painted the walls with the timeline of education in America. And that stuck with me because it painted a picture of exactly what Tony just said. Our educational system here in America was designed to make you a worker in some way, shape, or form. A factory worker in whatever era that was, or nowadays choosing our career, we're still a worker somewhere, but it was designed to do exactly what Paul said, track us, to put us in a pathway that they felt we needed to be in. And every couple years, every about 10 years, that track shifts. What are we going through? The STEAM era right now? So we're all tracking for STEAM careers right now. A while back, we were tracking for literacy careers, making sure everyone was literate. It's all about tracking. But when I look at that and how in the world can we disrupt it, I look at what's going on in our world today as far as the Black Lives Matter and any other biased thing that's going on against people of color in this world right now. We are fighting, we are rioting, we are standing, we are walking, we are doing everything that we need to do to make sure that, or to try to change a system that allows unarmed African American people to be killed. Why aren't we doing that same fight in education? Because if we aren't killing the children physically, but we are killing their spirit sometimes, and we are killing the way their brain thinks, and because we are tracking them and we are putting them in a box that we thought, meaning education as a whole, but that educational system feels that they need to go this way, they need to act that way, they need to look a certain way, and if they don't, they get sent out of class. Right now they get taken off the Zoom. It's whatever we can do to keep them from getting the education that they deserve. We're gatekeepers, and we're using those things, and we are doing the same thing. That systematic racism that is happening in our streets is happening in our classrooms. It's happening in our school districts. It's happening even in the hiring process. Can you look at some of the districts around San Diego and tell me how many African American administrators you see? Not a lot. And if our children can't see themselves in these roles, if they can't see people in front of them that are modeling what they can be, then they are going to march to the beat of the drum that we set for them. And right now, we're pushing them wherever we want them to go.
It's interesting that you brought up, we haven't really talked about teacher training or identifying teachers and how we identify teachers. We haven't even done that, but I know Paul and I are working on something and also Fabiola are working on something to help address some of that, but thank you for that.
I got a testimony to tell.
Okay, I know. We watch it. We are our testimony. We're looking at you right now.
Testify.
That's actually a point that makes some systems uncomfortable. I know that when I hear school systems say we want our Black and brown students to graduate and be college and career ready, I've turned around and looked at leadership tables and have said, so are you hiring them? Because everyone here doesn't look like the way of the children that you're championing for. And so we really have to get in mind of like, what do we really want? What are we really seeking? I'm still trying to wrestle. I know you were a politician, Tony, so I'm trying to wrestle the policy question, because I immediately went to this, this change that needs to happen around collectivism versus individualism. Like I think that that's playing itself out even now with who's wearing masks and who isn't, and why we're wearing the masks in the first place. But we see that all of the time across the history of the United States, the history of our education system, the communities that we're trying to serve. And so my head's more there, but it's not necessarily policy. But I definitely wanted to speak to Tamer's point. We were hosting a Black leadership panel, and I really wanted a Black superintendent. And I looked around at our county and I was like, okay, that's not okay.
There's one.
Yeah, it used to be one in Oceanside at one time. Is he still there?
No.
He retired.
Tired.
But there has to be an intentionality around that too, Tamara. That's a loaded question. You're absolutely right. I mean, it transcends in every aspect of our school system. When I go into a school and I go into an AP class, I ask the question, where are the kids that represent this community in these classrooms? Where are the adults who look like our kids, like you said? And in a leadership position, there has to be an intentionality. You're either going to recruit or you're not. And it's not about just putting someone in there, but it's about recruiting and finding the best people, because I will tell you, the majority of my cabinet does not look like me, and that was not by accident. But I also have the best cabinet in the county. I know that these are the people that deserve the role. They're doing the work, but they reflect the communities we serve too. And it is that important. And it's gender, everything. So you're going to get no complaints here. In fact, Fabi is working with our HR department. How do we push that out in terms of structuring HR departments? So there is that lens. How do you build your interview panel so it is diverse? So we're getting the perspective of everyone at the table to put the right people in front of our children.
But those are all things that could be policy, internal policy stuff, right?
That's correct.
Paul, as you go on and move to be, the Secretary of Education under the Biden administration, the policy has to still be there, right? I mean, it just can't be a one dynamic leader. I want you to keep that question in mind, but I do want to identify a couple of questions that were asked by the community that's watching, and lots of people are participating, by the way. One is that I'm going to read three of them. California teacher education programs. What will it look like post-COVID? And what do we, the village, want it to look like? That was from Michael. And then Viet, who is a RISE fellow, can peer collaboration be implemented using technology so children aren't studying alone? And then one other question specifically is, one teacher, one principal, one program can impact a whole community. Society will pay attention to local innovation and change. How about valuing people or students above learning content? So those are some of the questions that are out there. And I was saying the chat room is on fire, just so you know. There's lots of comments here. But I just want to insert that. And Steve or anybody else, did you want to go, post-industrial style education? What are your thoughts?
It's almost like post-apocalyptic education style is what it feels like.
Yeah, some people would think about it that way, as apocalyptic. You're right.
But putting on a hat of optimism here and hope, two thoughts are coming to me. First, related to the conversation that was here earlier, in that when we talk about inclusion at the table, it's like we're a bunch of adults projecting what we think is going to be best for kids, right? And I've seen it happen as a token or as a symbol to say, let's include kids in the conversation, but like, truly, how are we including kids in the conversation? And in a systemic way to inform policy, right? Like, what kinds of conversations are we having with kids to make that happen? And this thought about can peer collaboration be implemented using technology so children aren't sitting alone? Yes, yes, yes. Like, yes, absolutely. And there's a lot of different ways that that's being done in the innovative space. And that's another bridge that needs to be built, right? So you're seeing the trend right now in education is you're seeing these parent pods pop up. And the parent pods that are popping up, that it's like, how do you tap into that to create a collaborative network within, right? And technology, again, can augment the parent's role, can augment the teacher's role, but technology at the end of the day can do a lot of harm and a lot of damage as well. And so I think having some sort of screener for like how we're introducing new technologies, because you're going to see a whole bunch of ed tech revolution right now of new technologies being implemented to districts and schools, but which ones are actually doing good for kids and which ones are doing harm to kids. And I think having a litmus test, more than just a litmus test, but really being able to tell, like, research-based tech, what's going to be serving them. And when you ask this question about collaboration, that needs to be a key integrative process, because kids being on screens does not lead to kids with better outcomes. It's kids learning with kids learning with teachers, augmented by that role of technology.
And I went to my parent role with that question, because I know that when I listen to my son, when he's actually talking to friends and collaborating on assignments, that's actually when he's laughing, when he's joyfully participating. And so that, because I worry about him sometimes. I mean, both of his parents are working, he's kind of on his own. And so, but when I start hearing that collaboration and laughter and talking about mathematics, then I'm like, okay, good. He's doing well, he's collaborating. His teacher's being very intentional about how she's pairing them up. And so I'm really happy to hear that part of the things. And then much to your point, Stephen, about student voices, one of the things that we're doing is we're actually ensuring that we're hosting student panels, one a month with a different group. Our first one was with our Black students across San Diego County, and they let us know a lot of really good data about, like, this is what we can do, this is how we're experiencing racism in your systems currently, and this is what we're expecting teachers to do differently. Our next one will be with Asian students. I actually met them all today. And we were very intentional about including the Asian voice, because sometimes in issues of equity or in conversations of equity, we don't engage with that population. And so what I love is we have a whole spectrum. We have Middle East, we have Eastern Indian, we have Chinese, like we try to get a whole bite of, because Asia is huge, and really thinking about how are you experiencing racism at our schools, but most importantly, what can teachers and what can educators do differently tomorrow, so that your experience at our school systems is different.
Very good.
So Tony, to the first question, I mean, if I had my way, and we're doing it in our office and we're building this into our teacher training, but anyone who a prospective employee, this equity work and self-reflection and really the art of inclusion, this has to be part of our teacher training. It's not been a focus. We're building it into our beginning teacher network and those threads of how we're bringing people and onboarding them with self-reflection assessments that are tied to, your understanding of this. I wouldn't say, cultural competency, but I would say culturally responsive. How are we making sure that everyone who has the opportunity, and I say that, the opportunity to work with our kids, because our kids deserve the best. They deserve to have allies, champions, mentors, coaches. How are we filtering this and really making it part and parcel of our teacher onboarding program? Has to be in place. That should just be a no-brainer and a prerequisite to have and be afforded the opportunity to teach our children, to have this as part of your background training. We don't do that in teacher training enough. I know there's some efforts now. And grading, my gosh, you want to talk about breaking a kid's spirit. The most fascinating thing about grading and how this is all just tied into implicit bias left and right. It's probably one of the most subjective things in the world, and something that is so emotionally tied to. And we don't realize until we put people in the room and just say, hey, where did you learn how to grade? It's a fascinating response, myself included.
Yeah.
And so there are layers of this that we have to attack from all fronts that could be included in policy decisions, that if you're going to go through a teacher pipeline, these are some of the things that just have to be part and parcel of what we do. Plain and simple.
So when it comes to teaching curriculum, teaching our teachers, our potential teachers, through the credentialing program, that is moderate or over the state of California decides what those standards are for a teaching education program. Is that correct?
I think the California Teaching Commission has some standards about how you qualify in order to be able to legally administer a credential. Now, we in our office, San Diego County Office of Ed, I believe the only county, if not maybe there are two that actually offer these credentialing courses through our office in conjunction with the university. So if you're going to be an administrator, you could do your tier 2, 1, and 2 at our office. And Fabi and the team have revamped that. We started about 2 years ago to include all of those threads. How are you going to lead this work? How are you going to lead a school if you don't understand it? So
but the commission doesn't require you to do the things that you just said to do.
I don't want to give you bad information, but I don't think it's part of a requirement right now. I don't think it is. And the other thing, just to get back to the human condition, you know, in the early 90s when I was teaching, what was required was this course called Affective Ed. And it was about diversity and choices and character building. It was really getting kids to tell their story, so that they in a safe space. And somewhere along the line, we kind of got away from that. I think we have to bring back the human condition. We are right now in the space of post-COVID, but I would agree with the comments of my colleagues who said this much more eloquent than I, but we have to get back to paying attention to the human condition. We can't get to the academics without children feeling loved and valued. The textbook company needs to be blown up. That in itself creates some of those practices of marginalization of kids not feeling connected at school, having to see themselves in the curriculum from a deficit perspective. It is not okay. And what Fabi has done and what we did intentionally beginning in March was put out resources to say, our kids are suffering, are most vulnerable. We got to make sure that we're responding. And we built a bank of resources where kids could see themselves and the contributions of getting them connected, to the work, even though we were in 2 different buildings. We're not waiting for ethnic studies, not worried about the textbook, but really connecting with them on an authentic level through literature, through work, or whatever we could find to just make sure, hey, we got you. We love you. We got you. We're going to do the best we can.
I would tell you, somebody like Tamara, it's natural for her. I mean, she understands and sees it from a lens of being an African-American woman. Steve, you might not know, he told you some of his background. He sees it from a certain perspective too. That's really important.
Yep.
And we need more of that in regards to our teachers and administrators. We have a few more minutes, and I just want to give you all an opportunity to leave us with something that we can take. We've written a lot of notes. I know the people who are watching have, and my staff has taken notes on what you have said, and we're going to take them to heart too. But before you even say anything, is that there's a reason why you all are a part of this panel, is because we know you, we understand your heart, we understand what's really important to you when it comes to equity and really moving the education community forward in the city. And I just really want to encourage you all to continue to talk to each other. I know Paul and Fabi, I mean, you guys are going to have to talk to each other because you work with each other all the time. Please, and Stephen, please reach out to Paul. Tamara is our star. Paul, you just never know where she's going to be pretty soon. So just work with each other.
Always moving.
That's a big, important thing for us. But anything that you guys want to share at the end to kind of finish this up? We got a few minutes to kind of wrap up and tell us kind of what you want to leave with us and thoughts that you want to leave the community, because the community is going to go forward on these ideas.
I think the biggest thing that I'd like the community to go forward is to remember that we are a community and that they do have a voice. They do have a voice in the school community. All they have to do is step up and use that voice, whether it's at the city council, at the board meetings, at the county board meetings, it doesn't matter. be there for our children, be a voice for our children, be the advocates for our children. We're trying to do it the best we can on the inside, but imagine the impact if we have the inside and the outside working in conjunction to uplift our children and create an environment that is very supportive of their needs, no matter what their needs are. And then doing all of that with an equity lens. When you talked, Paul, about the teacher education, I remember my education. I was the only African-American in pretty much all of my classes. And I didn't get the support that other people got when they were going through their educational foundation to get my BA at a local university. And with that being said, imagine today us being able to be in those universities and teaching the next generation. Every single class that prospective teachers take should have an equity lens embedded.
Yep.
I don't care if it's math, I don't care if it's history, it doesn't matter. It should have an equity lens embedded, because if they can't figure out how to reach their students that don't look like them, that didn't grow up like them, that don't have the same privileges, and still be able to teach them and not let them fail in any subject, in any piece of school, then we as educators fail if that continues to happen. And that's happening these days. I had my educators reach out to me and tell me they want professional development to help them overcome some of these biases. Those are my marching orders. How can I help them do that? How can I help them see things through my eyes? And that's what I want our community to jump in and do. Help us see things through the community's eyes.
I want to jump in on that too, Tamara. Like, yes to everything you said. And I've been in meetings the past few months with like executives from Amazon and Apple and these big gaming companies and ed tech folks. And like, I keep feeling like I just want to hear the community voice. And that's like a very small part of the community voice, but it doesn't feel like community to me in a lot of ways. And so just like a big, my kids just got home.
There's the community.
That was really awesome, by the way, Stephen.
Perfect timing.
a big shout out to everybody who's listening. Like, please reach out. I can share my email address. Like, would love to have, if you want to have a say in a young ed tech company trying to make an impact, not only in San Diego, but throughout the nation. Like, we want your insights. We want your anything to do from policy to entrepreneurialism to like how tech should be generated for kids to learn to read, like any of that. Would love to hear your voice.
Mm-hmm. So a few days ago, actually, there were some students that said that all they were seeking were unity, community, and engagement. And I love that, by the way. Like, I have taken those 3 words and said, that's exactly what I want to. And so that's really what we're seeking as an equity department, is like leaning into our compassion, continue to lean into our humanity, understand each other. I love, Maya Angelou long ago said, hate doesn't happen up close. So how are we building dialogue, social dialogue, to understand one another, to continue to help one another? And so many times when people think about, equity work, they think it's divisive. It's not. It's actually the complete opposite of that. It's a way to connect in a deeper way, to have a really important dialogue. And I'm going to just say it. There's 2 components. It's love. It's love. It's love for one another. And there's also this notion of emancipatory leadership. Like, how are we creating conditions for people to be free, to be self-authorized, and to really think about their own gift? And I'm going to make a shameless plug, much about community and engagement. All of our school districts in California are supposed to submit a LCP, a learning continuity plan. As a stakeholder and as a parent, you should have been surveyed or have been engaged in this work. And it's a quick turnaround time. And what I have discovered is we're not engaging our communities as strongly as we should. So we partnered with the NAACP and are hosting 2 learning sessions. Friday evening is in Spanish and Saturday morning it's in English. We're really giving you like, what does LCP even mean? And how can I give my feedback to the school districts? Because it's necessary that we really think about, from a parent's perspective, how we're experiencing education through a pandemic. But I'm going to say one more time, let's lean into our compassion. Let's have love, community, unity, and engagement.
You're so consistent with that love thing, Fabiola.
Yes.
Every time we talk to you, you talk about that. So that's really important. Dr. Paul?
Yeah, love matters. It does. And now you know why we love Fabi and the work that she does.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you, Tony, for providing this opportunity and shining a light. And, everything that is necessary needs to be discussed and put out there. I commend you for doing the right work and building a platform to make sure that the community has an outlet and an ally. So I just I'm humbled and honored to sit here with you today and just participate in an hour discussion, not just with you, but with my three friends here who were so inspiring in so many different ways. And I'm an eternal optimist. I would tell you, through our African American Advisory Council, Latinx Council, and tribal communities, Middle Eastern. We've got not just educators and parents at the table in these groups, but also children. We have our students at the table telling us what they want and need. And through that, Fabi will, facilitate a process of build a blueprint for success for our historically underserved kids based on research, based on what our folks want. And that's going to go to our board. That is going to be a symbolic act of this is not just a priority for us, but here are some real specific steps you can take as an organization to start to create a place that's inclusive of all children that walk through those doors. And until we get 100% of our kids walking the stage of graduation prepared for 3 or 4 different options of their choice, not the system's choice, we have work to do. And I'm just proud to call you colleagues and friends, and I'm ready to fight the fight and do whatever it takes to make sure we get there. So thank you.
I believe you, Paul, and you all, thank you very much. I mean, you're all my friends, and I just felt such a lot of positive, leadership here. And I know, I just feel more comfortable the fact that you all are a part of this education system that is so important to my grandkids, And I just want to say thank you for that. And hopefully we can continue to have this conversation. I'll let you all know as we move forward. We've taken notes. We're going to look at this video again and try to glean some things out of it so that we can bring it to the community to have some discussions about change. And hopefully we can call on all of you all to help us move forward on this. With that, again, thank you. I just want to remind everybody that we have upcoming programs. But before I do that, I want to say thank you to SDG&E and the San Diego Foundation for supporting this, because they are funding this whole discussion and this whole process. And that's part of what is needed in this community. But they also are supportive. SDG&E for sure is supportive of some of our programs. We have a nonprofit and small business training program where every month we focus on some type of training related to small businesses, how we can support these small businesses or nonprofits in the community. We have our Rise Now effort that next Thursday on September 24th at 6 p.m. We'll have that discussion. Just get on our email and list or on our Facebook page, and you'll find out that information. And of course, the ILIA Awards, we're identifying true leaders in our community, and we're going to award them with and praise them for the work that they do and have done and will do. It's going to be on Monday, October 12th, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And we're doing that to support our programs here at RISE. So with that, thank you so much. We appreciate you. And before we go, we just really ask for you to answer the question overall. How would you rate the virtual event? And also the other question would, how likely is it that you would recommend the event to a friend or colleague? So if you can answer those questions, we appreciate it. And with that, God bless you and thank you so much.